So today on Tuba Da Vinci, we are talking about focal reducers, and you're probably the most familiar with the Metabones Speedbooster. We're going to talk about how they work and if it's something that you should look into buying for yourself and your setup. So stay tuned. First and foremost, I want to give a special shout out to Shea Bros, who requested this video. Thank you so much for taking the time to leave a comment. We love making videos you guys request. We know that it gives us that feeling of community and we love it. So keep them coming, keep the requests coming, and we'll keep the videos coming. So at the very core, focal reducers are adapters that help you use different lenses on different cameras. So the only time they would work is if you have glass for a bigger sensor than your camera. So for example, this is a full frame old film lens that's made for full frame cameras like the Sony A7, and we are shooting on a Panasonic G85, a micro four thirds. So if you have glass that is made for a bigger sensor than your camera, then a focal reducer is a good option. Now the first thing you want to notice about focal reducers is they are not just dummy adapters. They actually have custom glass. So this is a adapter made to allow full frame Nikon glass to work on a Sony. So you would need a adapter to adapt the same glass for your Panasonic or other micro four thirds Olympus cameras. But unlike a dummy adapter, a focal reducer has its own custom glass. And that is what makes it special and different from just an adapter and why it costs so much more money. So the core reason for why you want a focal reducer is twofold. One is it affords you more light. So more of the light that would have just passed over the sensor actually gets focused in, and more of it hits your smaller sensor, giving you better stops and better low light performance. And two is you get a better field of view. So as you know, with the micro four thirds sensor, you're gonna have a crop factor with a full frame lens like this of 2x. That means that if you have a 50mm lens like this, it's actually gonna be the equivalent of a 100mm lens, because even though it's showing you 50mm of the picture, only half of that is being recorded on the sensor, and as a result, you'll have that crop factor. So let's talk about how that's achieved. So with this full frame glass, it's made to hit a full frame sensor, and as a result of the fact that we're adapting it to work on a micro four thirds camera, some of that picture is going to miss the sensor and be cropped out. So first let's talk about how you get more light and better low light performance with a focal reducer. If you remember back to when you were a kid and you had a magnifying glass and you were maybe burning insects, or I used to write letters and initials on my wooden fence as a kid. A magnifying glass takes the light that would hit an area this big and focuses it into an area that would only hit a small little pin-sized dot. And by doing that, the light is concentrated and it gets brighter and hotter, and it'll actually burn things. Now, a focal reducer is kind of doing the same thing. It's taking the light that would have come to a focal area this big, and by bending it with convex glass, it takes the light and focuses it on a smaller area. Now, by doing this, more of the light that the lens captured is going to hit your sensor, and as a result, it's going to be a brighter image. Now, just how much depends on the focal reducer that you get and the camera and lens combination that you have. So we're gonna keep this abstract, but the idea is, let's say for example, the Panasonic G85 with a full frame lens would have a crop factor of 2, well maybe now it's a crop factor of 1.75. So more of that light is actually being focused and gathered. Now, the second reason why you'd want a focal reducer is to get a better field of view. So as I mentioned, that crop factor of 2 is problematic because let's say for example, I have this 28mm full frame lens. That lens is a pretty good choice for shooting indoors, but with the 2x crop factor, that becomes a 56mm. And that might just be too much to capture an average size room inside. So this lens, if I were to get an adapter to work on my G85, would kind of be pointless for what I wanted it for, which is low light indoor shooting, because this is a f2 lens. So you can help that a little bit. And so by taking a focal reducer, you can take the image and focus it into a smaller area and get more of the image on your lens. Now, it's not gonna be perfect. You're still gonna have wasted light that isn't gonna hit your sensor, but it's gonna be better than if you didn't have the focal reducer. So the benefits of a focal reducer are, one, you get more light hitting your sensor for better light and better light gathering. And two, you get a better field of view by bringing more of that light and more of that picture into the area of your sensor. Now, focal reducers aren't with their drawbacks as well. Now, because a focal reducer is introducing glass, that means that the picture quality will never be as good as if it wasn't there. Just remember that whenever you introduce a new glass element, you can never have a better picture quality. It's always gonna be slightly worse. So if you get a really good focal reducer like the Metabones Speedbooster, which is probably the industry standard, the one you're probably most familiar with, that might be 99% as good as the original image, but it can never be better than 100%. So keep that in mind. When you add glass, you're going to degrade the image, and just how much depends on the manufacturer of the focal reducer, and it's something that you want to keep in mind. So there might be less sharpness, there might be some vignetting on the corners, there might be some different elements that are introduced if the glass isn't perfectly clean. Now, it's also another piece of glass you have to keep dust off of and all of that. But that being said, I think with a focal reducer, if you keep it clean and you get a good high quality one, which they cost around 500 bucks, they're not cheap, you're gonna be in pretty good shape, and I think you'll really love the image quality. So that's how they work and their pros and their cons, but should you get one? That's a good question, and I think the answer there is it depends. It depends on if you have a collection of glass from some other company from the past before you bought your Micro Four Thirds camera or smaller sensor camera. If you've got really, really good glass that you've got in your kit, well then it might make sense to go that route, especially if all your glass is from one company. Like this is all Nikon glass here. So if I were to get a focal reducer, I would get a Nikon full frame focal reducer for my G85 Micro Four Thirds camera. And by doing that, I can breathe new life into all these old, wonderful lenses that are sitting idle as it is right now. So if you want more light and a better field of view, and you want to breathe new life into those old lenses for your G85 or your GH5 or your Olympus EMD cameras, well then a focal reducer just might be the thing to look into. Now, even though they are $500, if you consider the fact that you have already made an investment in another ecosystem, well, it might be really worthwhile, and for 500 bucks, all that old glass would be useful again to you. So if that is you, if you have great glass from another company that is for a bigger sensor size than your current camera, well then focal reducers are a great option, and they're something that we really recommend. I don't currently have one, but I have been toying with the idea of getting a Metabones Speedbooster for my G85. And so if I do that in the future, I'll make a video showing you the quality and the image comparisons, but until then, I hope this helped. I hope this kind of showcases exactly how focal reducers work. They're not magic. It's not like there's a focal reducer for every camera and every lens to magically bring in more light. That's not how they work. They only work if the lens that you are using is made for a bigger sensor than the one you're shooting on. And in that case, they are a really great tool to have, and they might make sense for you to go and check out. We're Amazon affiliates, and we have links to all these products below. If you can check them out and follow our links, it would help us out a lot. It would keep us going. It would keep fueling this passion of ours, and we'll keep the great content coming. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we hope you enjoyed it. Leave us your comments, subscribe, stay tuned. We'll have a lot of great stuff coming here. And as always, thank you. I'm Ricky with Tuba Da Vinci. We'll see you guys next time.